a nomad sounds a little crazy. Sure, it's not a normal thing to do. I ended up getting fired from that job. It was horrible, awful. I thought my life was over. Hey, welcome back to the channel. I'm Paige. I travel full-time in my RV with my husband Justin and our cat Ratface. I'm basically a nomad. I've been a nomad for over a year now, and I'm shooting this video in the middle of the Texas desert, actually not too far from Big Bend. I am fighting the good fight with my hair. It keeps getting into my face. Mostly nomad life has been great, and it's afforded me a lot of opportunities like this, where I could hang out and live in this cool place for a little while. But today I'd like to talk about some of the reasons why I became a nomad in the first place. It's pretty personal. I was actually kind of nervous filming this video, and the first time I filmed it, I actually couldn't make it through the story. But let's do this. Travel has always been a big thing in my family. When we were young, my parents took us on lots of trips, and it's hands down the happiest time we ever had as a family. Dad was a construction worker. He worked hard, but anytime he had anything extra, that's what he did with the money. He took us on trips. I grew up in the woods in Maine. A nice, safe place to live, but it can be a little boring. So at 30, I set out for a fresh start. Went to Ohio where I had some friends. My parents still came and visited every now and then, and I would visit them as well. But it was more difficult than when I was in Maine. And then later it started to get even harder, especially for my dad. He was a survivor of kidney cancer. He'd had one of his kidneys removed, but thankfully the other one was fine. And for years he was living on one kidney. And then somewhere along the line, his remaining kidney started to fail. So he ended up getting dialysis. And anybody who's been on dialysis can tell you that it makes your life a lot harder to manage. My dad had to have multi-hour treatments on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So it sort of tied him into one spot, which was a really tough thing for a guy who loved to travel. He was a trooper though. He actually still came and visited me in Ohio. What he did was he found another center, another dialysis center in the Cleveland area, and he got his treatments there. And I know it was hard for him because it wasn't his normal nurses, his normal routine, but he did it. And I was so appreciative for that. And Justin and I, we went on a couple of cruises, and we noticed that they had dialysis nurses on board that could do treatments. And when we came back from our Alaska cruise, we told him about it, and Dad was like, oh my gosh, I'd love to do that. I'd love to go to Alaska. And he'd already done, a different dialysis center with us in Ohio, so he knew he could do it. And the Alaska trip would certainly be worth it. But my mom was like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be in a boat. I don't want to be near all those people. And Dad was like, oh, okay. All sad, disappointed, because he didn't want to go without Mom. So we kept trying to work on Mom, but Mom was like, no, it just doesn't sound like fun. So fast forward, he was on dialysis for several years, and then something happens, and he gets really sick. Sorry, I'll need a minute. He ended up needing to go to an oncologist because he had multiple myeloma, which is a form of blood cancer. And he did everything he was supposed to do, and it just wasn't working. And about this time, my husband Justin got a really good job offer from a place down in Dallas. An old work buddy was like, hey, do you want to come down? And I was kind of like, what? Move to Texas? But I kept an open mind. I did some research on it, and the more I read, the more it made sense. So Justin went down to do interviews, he got the job, it was a huge raise. And I stayed up in Ohio a little bit to fix up the house, did the YouTube school of DIY, teaching myself to be handy. And then once I had the house up for sale, I followed him down. And I'm there maybe a couple of days in the apartment in Texas when we get a call that my dad's in the ICU and he almost died. This was July 2019. He was never the same after that. Mid-March 2020, we all know what happened. Life-changing for everybody, and we're in lockdown. And then a couple of weeks after that, my dad passes away. He never got to go on that cruise, Sorry, I told you this was going to be a tough video. So I wish I could say that was the only big life-changing thing that drove me to be a nomad. But I can't. It didn't stop there. The loss didn't stop there. What happened to my dad was really sad. It really gutted me, actually. But I had some warning, and he'd been sick on and off for years, which, anybody who's been through that knows that it doesn't make it easy. But it's a different kind of stress. It wasn't unexpected. It was just difficult. And my next loss was very unexpected. There's no real gentle way to say this, and it happened really suddenly for me. So I'm just going to tell you. My older sister passed away suddenly at 46 of a heart attack, just like that. She had no history of heart disease that we knew. It came out of nowhere. My sister was a single mother, and because of that, because life can be hard for everybody, but especially in rural Maine, where sometimes the jobs are hard to come by, She was always working and having a hard time doing much other than surviving. My sister and I were really close. The last few times that I talked to her, she was talking about how excited she was because my nephew was about to turn 18. She was kind of telling me of her plans for when he's out of the nest. She was going to date more. She was going to travel and have an adventure. She was kind of waiting and waiting, to do that. And she had all these plans. She was at work. That's the other thing. She was in the middle of a shift at a dollar store when she passed away. It's unbelievable. And it really makes you think, tomorrow is not guaranteed. It's not promised. It's hard because you don't want to live in fear. Things don't last forever, right? But at the same time, you can't take it for granted. You have to enjoy every minute. And I wish I could tell you that that was the last scary thing that happened to me for a while, but I can't. The next thing happened just a couple months later. I had been having some health issues myself, and I'd been working with a specialist, and finally they were like, you need to have surgery. So I went in and I had major surgery, and the pathology came back, and the cellular picture was not good. I basically dodged cancer myself, and that really hit home with everything that happened with my dad. So I was recovering from that procedure, and I was processing that just a few months after I lost my sister, which was really hard. It was a lot. It was a really tough time. I wanted to get out there because I love to travel, and I always have. I said to Justin, let's go on a big trip. Let's do something fun. And we started talking, we started thinking. I was like, we'd always wanted to go see the Pacific Northwest together. He went when he was younger, and he'd always wanted to take me because I've never been. And he'd also gone from working with that firm in Dallas to another firm that was full remote, and he could work from anywhere. And because of the nature of my job, I've been remote as a worker for a while now too. So we started kind of saying, yeah, let's go. Let's get out there. And so we started to kind of look at stuff and do some planning, and we realized that hotels and flights were really expensive. And then somebody at work recommended an RV to Justin. So we started looking at what it would cost to rent one for like a month to do the Pacific Northwest trip. We talk about this more in the video about why we didn't rent an RV before we bought one, which I'll link below. But it turned out that between, the rental prices, the mileage, the cleaning fees, it was insane. And we realized we could easily buy an RV for the price it would cost to rent one. Like renting it for a month was like payments on that thing for a year. And then, we kind of went through the YouTube rabbit hole, and we saw full-timers making it work and did the math. And we were like, Because honestly, our lifestyle wasn't cheap in Dallas. It was actually pretty expensive. We had gotten the apartment, even though it wasn't the most affordable one, because it was close to Justin's job at the time. And now he had a job that was better paying than that one, and he could do it anywhere. So it's like, we could really live comfortably and travel and see all kinds of things and break even very easily. Or so we thought. We're gonna do a video for you later on our living costs after a year on the road. But in theory, it was kind of like, we can have a lot more fun, and it would be about the same or a little bit more, and why not? So in our situation, doing the full-time Nomad thing was a lot cheaper than being weekend warriors because our rent would go away. And we didn't have a car payment at the time. We'd paid off our cars. So the only car payment we actually have is on the RV ourselves. And it was a big, arguably crazy life change, but it's not the first one I ever had, and the other one turned out so well that it did make me want to give this a shot. So what's the other big crazy life change I've had? Well, my work life has been insane. I talked a little bit about this in an earlier video, but I've done everything. I've done the minimum wage kind of stuff that I was talking about my sister doing in Maine. I've worked at a dollar store, among other things. I eventually worked my way through a medical transcription course at community college back in the day, and I ended up typing up medical records for a hospital system back in Eastern Maine for about 7 years, which ended up being really great work. And then there were some problems because a lot of it was automated and offshored and outsourced. Basically, my job was gone overnight. So I went back to school and I got my bachelor's degree in my 30s, and I ended up becoming a psychological researcher, going to conferences, doing that. I was a scientist for a while, which was fine. Academia can be really tough though, and as anyone who has experienced it can tell you, the adjunct track is difficult. It's hard to get tenure. Pure research jobs are ebb and flow. If a particular political administration is hostile towards science, the funding isn't there. So I ended up getting a job outside academia and outside of research, working for an employee assistance program. It was basically psychological consulting, workplace health. I was the manager of learning and development. So I would design workplace policies, trainings, and I would deliver them myself. And I would also hire trainers and help them develop trainings. We handled a lot of things like stress management or change management, or if there's an incident at work and people need a counselor to come in and talk about it. I was involved involved in that whole process. So that's what I did. And I'll tell you, I loved my job, but I hated the people I worked for. I don't know how much I want to go into this, but I ended up getting fired from that job. It was very stressful. Despite having a lot more education, I actually made less than I did with my associate's degree typing hospital records. And I had to drive nearly 2 hours in one direction to get to the office in rush hour traffic. And I was really stressed out. Especially in 2016, there had been some political unrest. The country was in upheaval. There were lots of fights at work. We were having to respond to these incidents where employees were having physical altercations with one another. And one involved someone driving a car where they shouldn't. Let's just put it that way. It was very, very scary times, and I was working on all of that. It was a core part of my job. And you know, working for very low pay and driving a lot, and I was really stressed out. And so I kind of started writing again to deal with the stress of it. And I was working on a book that I had written just like, I think in 2012. I wrote this thing, the rough draft, I put it in a drawer, and in 2016 when I was stressed out, I started editing it, I started blogging online and posting and everything. And then like 6 months later, I put out the book and it did pretty well. It surprised me. And about the time I wanted to go pro anyway, I ended up getting fired from work. If you want to know more about the firing, I can go into that in a longer video, but it was horrible, awful. I thought my life was over. But luckily I'd already started the writing and social media and everything at that point. And I could have gone back and, you know, try to do pure research or do some more in academia, you know, maybe go get another degree. But I talked to my husband, Justin, and he was like, no, you are not doing that. Very firm. He said that people routinely underestimated me and devalued me and my efforts. And the only way that I was going to make what I was worth is if I worked for myself. So I did that. It has not been easy. It has not been easy at all. It's actually been harder than working at a regular gig, but I love it. You never have full control. You always have to answer to your customers, but there's a lot more flexibility as far as timing. And you know, I love that. I can schedule my work for when I want and I can do it wherever I want. I've been full-time working for myself since 2017. Justin said the only way I'd ever make what I was worth is if I worked for myself, which is a crazy, crazy thing to do. Very stressful to work for yourself. Not easy, not even a little. But it's part of why I know sometimes crazy things do work out, because that has worked out very well for me. And so I was like, okay, you know, being a nomad sounds a little crazy. Sure, it's not a normal thing to do, but it could work out very well. And it has, and I'm really glad that I've done it. I think it's really easy to have that inertia, you know? Just to go through your routine and go through your routine and go through your routine and wait for a day when you finally get to do what you want to do and never get there. So that's why I chose to be a nomad. Life's for the living, you know? So yeah, that was pretty personal. And it's a little windy out here, so I apologize if there's any time when the audio got weird, but it was really nice talking to you and it was really good to get that off my chest. So yeah. Anyway, that's my story. I've got a lot of good videos I'm working on for you guys. It's hard work. I only learned to video edit last year. I'm the one who edits the videos. Justin does a lot of the technical work on the RV and he drives. I do all the video editing for the channel. And I'm learning something new every video. I appreciate all of you. The likes, the subscribes, the comments. It's really cool. It's really nice. I love hearing from you. Anyway, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.